Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Live Boldly with Sarah. Today I have on Seth, and I'm back in my office. I did a recording on. I've been trying to connect with you, which is so awesome that we're finally here, Seth.
Yes.
It's so awesome. And I had a guest on Friday that coincidentally enough, we were trying to connect, right?
Okay.
Vienna Farrow, and she was just like an incredible conversation. And we were trying, and then we finally got it scheduled. And lo and behold, I had a water polo meet down in San Diego
Oh
that
no.
I needed to be at. And so, well, needed quote, it's my son. Like for me, that's a
Yeah.
need. And
Yes.
so I took the podcast from my car. So I did my very first podcast episode from my car, which is nice to
No
be back in my office
way.
now. Yeah, it was rad.
Oh my gosh.
Right now, you are in Joshua Tree, which is one of my favorite
Yes.
places.
Yes.
And it's so beautiful and magical there. And
It is.
we're going to have like the most fun conversation because it's Monday. You're coming
Okay.
off of a weekend. I'm coming off of a weekend. We've both been supporting a lot of people through
Mm-hmm.
that weekend. So through this conversation, let's support one another while we're also supporting the listeners. How does that sound?
Amazing. Amazing. I
Amazing,
love it.
right?
Big smile, ear to
Big
ear.
smile. Yes, as we all need more big smiles. So I
Yes.
want you to tell us a little bit about yourself. There were a couple of things when I was reading through your bio. You've cheated
Okay.
death,
Yep.
which, by the way, I'm so happy to be here with you. And let's just start there. I have had different people on my podcast that have also cheated death.
Okay.
And it's such you know what? Let's just start there. Let's just start there. I want you to go and tell us a little bit about you. Tell us about those experiences and where you're at today.
Ooh.
I know.
Okay.
Let's just
Such
go.
a small question.
I know.
I study resilience inside and outside the workplace. I study death through my mediumship, through animal communication, and I learned so much about life through death. I think I figured out over 2,000 readings.
Whoa.
And so I'm also a death doula, so I'm a bereavement facilitator. There's just all sorts of things that I do surrounding death. I also talk for corporations. This past weekend, I did a talk for USC for their leadership conference for the Keck School of Medicine, all about the 6 levels of awareness. So I believe that awareness is the key to transform your life, and not only your life, but everyone's life around you. I will answer all your questions, I promise.
No, yeah. My son played for USC, so there you go.
Oh,
All
yay.
these connections we have.
I I help people who've lost their smile find joy again. That's
Okay, I want to
their
just like sit there.
okay.
I help people who have lost their smile to find joy again.
Yeah.
That is such a hell of a gift.
Yeah.
It is so anybody who's not smiling right now, those listeners, I want you to just like take a second with us as we are sitting here smiling after our big weekend, right?
Yeah.
And just know that we're smiling with you. So
Mm.
for those people that, are smiling wherever it is, if it's inside of you, if it's on your face, whatever. Because I do find that there's so much to be joy filled in life. And it's hard. It's hard to find it.
It's hard, yes, and
Hard to find it.
sometimes all you can do is show up,
Yep.
and sometimes all you can do is get out of bed. So it spans the whole gamut. And I guess for those who aren't smiling,
Yeah.
ask for support.
Yep.
Follow one of us, read one of my books, go online, you know.
Go on YouTube and watch this right now because we're smiling. There's
Yes,
a there's a
but
shameless plug.
yeah. But one of the reasons why we didn't have this earlier was because I wasn't in a good spot because of this lovely divorce that I'm going through.
Um,
And for those who haven't been through a divorce, it is terrible, terrific, magnificent, terrible. Yeah, all the words, right?
yes.
And we're amicable. So, and I can't really talk about too much, but the highs are so high and the lows are so low. Um, I can't say that I cheated death this time, but going back to your question, I've cheated death 3 or 4 times. I've survived cancer. It was skin cancer. My back had lymph nodes removed, the whole thing. I I nearly contracted HIV from one of my exes. Um, He like seroconverted to HIV positive while he was with me, and I thought we were monogamous.
Ooh,
So that was interesting. And by the way, that's not even the reason why I broke up with him later on. There were other reasons, but right then and there, I was with him, you know. So I was really appreciative and grateful for that experience. And then I've been held at gunpoint actually twice in two different countries.
what?
Yeah, once in Colombia when I was like 18 years old. It was so silly. And then once well, not silly, but it was just like for them, for the guerrillas that were pulling us over, that was routine. But for me, having a gun pointed to my head, the back of my head, them frisking me, turning me around, asking me all sorts of questions, that was not normal for my life at that time, right? Luckily, they got what they were searching for on the bus, and they took that guy somewhere. I don't even know where. And we got back on the bus, and we're like, okay, we're going to go on the rest of our trip back to Ecuador because I spent a year of my life in Ecuador. Um, it was funny. My mother basically disowned me for the 2 weeks I was in. And she's like, I'm not even going to think that I have a son for 2 weeks because you're in Colombia in 1998 and it's dangerous. Anyway, and then the last time was Mexico 2011. And I was held at gunpoint for like an hour by a cartel. I was the director of HR for this beautiful company. Quick story. I'll make it real quick. But they asked us all sorts of questions. They ransacked the vehicle. They wanted the vehicle. I had to threaten them with like this lieutenant that I knew in the area. And after about an hour, I almost peed my pants. They let me go. And then the next month, they got the car. Like I wasn't in it, thank God. But they kidnapped our one of my security guards. They beat him to within an inch of his life, left him on the side of the road. So it was a terrible 2 months that going through that. But you know, he was so close to taking me and or the car, and it makes you really happy to be alive, you know?
Right. And we're coming off of the three. There were the three, two brothers, and then the third that they were just killed in Mexico.
Mm.
And in an area, by the way, that a lot of my friends go surfing. And it was because they wanted the tires,
Wow.
and it's just like
Yeah,
I think, let's just kind of take a little pivot here for a second.
sure.
You've been through tremendous trauma.
Hmm.
You've been through tremendous times in your life where you could have died.
Hmm.
And I have too. I've been through tremendous trauma, times where I could have died. I'm sitting here even as you're talking, and I'm
Yeah.
thinking, yo, I never realized that I actually cheated death in that moment.
Wow.
Right. And the gift of living. It's not even life. It's like living, the gift of
Right.
living.
Right.
And because everybody has the life, but do you really live in your life? Do you explore in your life? Do you adventure in your life?
Are you present
Are you
in your life?
present? Are you appreciating it? Are
Yeah.
you choosing to be with those people who give you more of that feeling of life, right?
Mhm.
Or are you choosing to be in a situation where you're not really living and you're just existing? And so just like in this conversation of, wow, like you've cheated it so many times. And here you are choosing joy
Yeah. Yeah. And laughter.
and left. Yeah,
Yeah.
lots of
Yeah.
laughter. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So keep going. So you have had, so keep going. So you have had these experiences in life, and how did that shape you? What came from that?
Yeah. So in all of my talks, at least at some point, I say, I do not want anyone to let their past define them. It can help shape and influence and inform, but do not let it define who you are now and who you will be tomorrow. Um, and I mean, this is why I'm on this earth. I think my sole purpose, I mean, my vision is to inspire the world through resilience tools, right? For people to heal and smile from the inside. And smiling from the inside is not about smiling all the time, not about being happy all the time. It's about having done the work, right? I've done therapy, I've done coaching, I've done the plant ceremonies, I've done all sorts of things. But I'm grateful for who I am and I'm grateful for the life that I've had. And I even say, like, every morning, here I go out back outside because I have an out backyard now. It's amazing. And I'm grateful for all the opportunities I've taken, and I'm grateful for all the opportunities I haven't taken. And I say the same thing in the future, right? I'm grateful for all the opportunities coming my way with ease and grace, and I'm grateful for all the opportunities that I won't take. Like that is where smiling from the inside, that the whole lifestyle kind of comes from. And it's using the tools. I mean, I had this goal for 36 books, right? So I already have a bunch of children's books. One more is coming out next couple of months. And then I have 2 books on deck. They're in proposal form for self-help and adults. But all my books have resilience tools in them. And yeah, I just love, I mean, also this is to answer your question, like moving people through transitional, difficult, rough times. That to me is resilience. Um, One definition of resilience for me.
Did you have a moment in all of this where you were just like, okay, this is going to be my shift. This is going to be my, so I often talk about, ideas become successful ideas when we put purpose, passion, and play into them. Our
I
purpose
love
is
it.
why, our passion is find the fun in it. Cause like we don't, like what are you most passionate about? Pull it from the inside. And then the play is literally playing with everything around that idea. So did you have a moment where you were like, okay, this is my idea, and this is like I've hit my quote rock bottom, as some people call it, whatever that is?
It's, I wonder if everyone has a moment, but for me, as I said, my boyfriend's seroconverted to HIV positive, right? I was in Mexico City going back and forth in the same job, same 6 months, by the way. He told me, and I had to get back to him. Like he was not in a good space, and I had to get back to him. Now, getting from the small little area I was in Mexico back to Mexico City was hard enough. There were 2 flights there, but then to get back to LA, you had to basically make like the 8 or 8:30 flight. So I did everything, and I was 2.5 hours away from the nearest airport. So it was a whole thing, but I made it to Mexico City somehow. And I was running to my seat. And they gave me, I don't know, D24 or F24, and 24 is my favorite number. And I sit down and I tell myself, you're about to go through something now it's gonna shift your relationship, it's gonna shift your life. How cool would it be if I had enough objectivity to start taking notes on like this whole process? And I was like, yeah, okay, I'm gonna do that. So I took notes. And then those notes became my first book, Smile from the Inside. Because I use the SMILE acronym, and I take people through I feel that everyone goes through these 5 stages in order to heal from tough, traumatic, challenging times. Yeah. And it took a while. I mean, don't get me wrong, it took 6 months the first time and then 6 months the second time, but it's what I give most of my talks on. Like,
Well, so do you mind if we go back to that moment?
of course.
Okay, so I want moments. I talk about it's not the destination, it's not even the journey, it's the moments within the journey that transform us through that journey into the destination. Okay. So
Yeah.
all of you go back and listen to that on slow. But so we've all had moments, and sometimes we jump over those moments and we don't even want to sit in the moment because the moment is so freaking scary for us. And for me, a little about my story, and if you know or not, so I had a moment where my husband came home, and back in 2013, Thanksgiving Eve, and I found out through one moment, which led to many moments, that he had been betraying me with men for 14 of our 17 years of marriage.
Oh my.
So there were multiple addictions involved. It was very scary. And I'm the person who had never even smoked pot. Okay. Like, I am that mom. I had never, because I was mom of 3 at the time, had
Right.
never even smoked pot. And I'm sitting there on my phone, scrolling through my phone. What's the effects of drugs? What's the effects of cocaine? What's the effects of pot? What are the, like, how do I know what this person is on? So it was a very defining moment for me.
Mhm.
And I sit in that moment now, and I think about what was so defining about it is me realizing I was never going to be the person that I was 1 second prior to.
Mhm.
that person who I was 1 second prior to is never going to be me again because of this one defining moment that wasn't even a defining moment based on something I had done. It was a defining moment based on something that somebody else had done. And now I was feeling the effects of.
Wow.
Right. And so where it became a positive defining moment for me was much later on,
Mhm.
much later on. It was almost a year later when I was standing on a rock in Sequoia National Park and had this realization of all of these things that I have been carrying in my life, these problems that I had been trying to fix were not mine. Therefore, I could not fix them. And it was driving me batshit crazy because I realized at that moment those things that I had been carrying were not my things to carry. They were the repercussions of somebody else's actions, right? And so
Mhm.
therefore, how can I transform this massive problem that I had been holding on to into something that could transform my life for the better, therefore transforming other lives for the better as well. Make
Amen.
sense?
Uh, yeah, same
Yeah.
thing.
He's like, yep, totally makes.
Been there a couple times.
So going back to that moment though for you,
Mhm.
because we have them where it is like such a life defining moment. And I know what it felt like for me, where you just have this realization of what I'm going through sucks. If it's a divorce, if it's the realization of, oh my God, this isn't going to work. If it's a possible HIV, right,
Mhm.
diagnosis, if it's a possible cancer diagnosis, if it's a possible whatever it is, where you don't even know the answer. I mean, for a while, you didn't know the answer
Right.
because
Right.
you had to go through your own testing. And I
Exactly.
know many people, by the way, that have been in those shoes.
Well, one of the major things was if I write it down, it's outside of me. If I can help one person with their traumatic experience, then just one, then this will have been worth it. I mean, there were multitudes of emotions, right? I didn't even think about myself, to be honest. Like when I found out, my husband three-way called with the doctor to tell me, and the doctor, like when he hung up, the doctor's like, "You haven't asked once about you." And I was like,
Mm,
"I don't care about me. It's not about me. It's about him." He's like, "No, because this not only will affect your life, but if you're also positive, it will affect the rest of your life."
yeah,
Um, but that still, I was still more concerned about my husband than me.
that's
Um,
very familiar.
yeah, yeah.
Me too.
Or sorry, my boyfriend, not husband. Um, I think I tell people it's like sometimes it's one day at a time, but I think sometimes it's like 1 hour at a time. I mean, I've been there a couple times in my life, and that was one of those times. It was just 1 hour at a time. And I think for me, I mean, not to quote myself, but in the SMILE method, right? There's like S is for shock, can't get around that. M is for what I call acceptance, which is like the part denial, part acceptance. That's when you hyper focus, and that's when you put one foot in front of the other and you go to the doctor, you get tested, right? You wait for those results. You have a good day, you have a bad day, followed by a good day, followed by a bad day. Then I feel like at some point after that, you go through what I call in overwhelmdom, and those are the significant and poignant emotions that we all must go through. And there you have either two choices. You can either resist them or you can persist through them. And that's difficult. And it took me um, probably a couple weeks before when we had to start telling people, like my parents, his parents. Um, that's when it started to hit. You know, that's when you laugh until you cry, you cry until you laugh. That's when the highs are super high, so the lows are super lows. Kind of like what I'm just now feeling from my divorce, to be honest. And then you get to this point of L, which is learning. That's when the reflection, the accountability, the responsibility, what you could do better next time, what you're going to do the same, what you're going to do differently. That's the reflection. I feel like that's where most people get stuck. And that's why most people, I think, don't heal fully or even 90% from what they've been through. And then E, I say embrace, because when you enthusiastically accept that which has happened to you, you get to a point where you're grateful for it, you see it as a positive, right? Now, I'm not there with all of the things I've been through, most of them, yes, But there's still, I was scammed, like sextortion. I don't know if you know what that is, but
Yes.
yeah, like when someone uses leverage on you that's sexual in nature to get money, that happened to me as well. So like that I'm not completely to a point of embrace yet. But I am really cool about sharing my um I'm, I finally shared it for the first time in public this weekend. Um, and sharing is also part of the whole process, right? Sharing with others, no matter how disappointed or embarrassed or upset you are. I know I went off on a little bit of a tangent, but
No, you didn't.
I
There's
think
no
I answered your
tension.
question.
It's exactly where it needs to be.
Thanks.
Well,
I
the other thing that I just want to point out too is you said that you sat in your favorite seat number, which was 24.
Mhm.
And the awareness piece of that, literally like sitting down in your favorite seat number and saying, okay, wow, this is my favorite seat number. I'm being guided in some way.
Absolutely.
Are you a faith-driven person or a spiritual person at all? Or do you have like those pieces that you listen to along the way?
Yeah, I mean, as an intuitive and a psychic, um, the universe gives me signs all the time. Some of which I don't see, some of which I do. But you're right, the 24 was my when I sat down, I was like, okay, I'm in this place. I I didn't want to say the right place at the right time, but I'm in this right now because I'm supposed to be here right now. And having that awareness, that's when I could get out of what I was feeling and then be like, how do I use this for the betterment of others? Right? Because that's just who I am. That's also probably a distraction. You know?
Well, so do you think that sometimes people look at that as just a like how can sitting in a seat really tell you anything? That's because I've had this happen, right? Where my mom passed away, for example, and I had to fly home suddenly. I was from running a retreat to all of a sudden like I had 2 hours to pack my bag and to get home, and I was exhausted. And I walked up and I had gotten my plane ticket. Of course, I'm always in the back of the plane. I don't know what it is. I'm always in the back of the plane. And I went to get onto the flight and I noticed that my number was in the fourth row and I hadn't even looked. And all of a sudden, the stewardess and I just kept walking. The stewardess said, no, 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 I think you're up here. And I went, I can't be up here. I'm never in the front of the plane. She said, oh no, for some reason you got pushed up to the front of the plane. And there was the number 4 involved. And my mom knew that I loved the number 4. And I was in first class taking the red eye. And I know it was because she knew that I needed sleep. Like I was exhausted. I was
Yeah.
absolutely exhausted at that point.
Yeah.
After her passing, she and I were super, super close.
Mm.
And so sitting in that seat, I just broke down in tears because I was like, oh my gosh, this was provided for me to show me that exactly what you were saying, like I'm in this situation, right? And I'm not here alone. There is something greater than me supporting me through this.
Mhm. I believe that 100%. Just in fact, and thank you for sharing that story. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Last week, I was debating whether to add this one last story, and it was all about you catch more flies with honey than vinegar. And I have this really cool Buddhist story where I was talking with this monk, and the monastery was closed, and then because I was so nice and lovely, he opened it for me. We had a whole conversation about gay marriage and marriage equality, and he basically had the same conversation 2 weeks later with the Dalai Lama, who was coming to visit him. And it changed like 6 months later. The Dalai Lama said, oh, I'm actually not only for gay marriage, but I'm also for marriage equality based upon what I had said in my conversation. Right. And I was like, this is a good story. It's a really cute, fun story. Um, and I was the whole day, I was like, should I put it in there? Should I put it in there? All of a sudden, I was watching randomly Woody Woodpecker with friends of mine, right? And that line it just shows up. And this woman just says it. I'm like, oh my God, that's my sign right there. Like, yes, it needs to go in there.
It
So yes,
totally needs to go in
I
there.
absolutely believe in that. Yeah. And
How
then
do
it
you,
could be as small as a butterfly, right? And I know when I see orange butterflies, it's what someone else, if it's yellow butterflies, it's someone else in my life.
yeah.
Or yeah, yeah. Signs are everywhere.
How do you teach people to listen to them? And then I want to dive into this other space of your work.
Yeah. Um, I mean, I think there are those people. I was doing a reading a couple months ago. It was the first reading after my major events of my divorce. And I was hesitant because I was very emotional and I didn't know how it would be. We're in this reading, and this father and husband comes through so clearly to me. And he's making jokes. And at some point they ask the same question, like, how do we recognize him when he comes through? And I literally, what I felt was the cheesiest of things, right? I was like, oh, well, it's not like as if he leaves pennies like on one side, right? Like heads up, or it's not like he sends you roses and they both started laughing and crying at the same time. And they're like, why do you say that's cheesy? And I was like, oh, I felt like he said they're cheesy. They're like, well, that's what we believe that he does. And I was like, oh God. I was like, oh. Wow. So he wasn't joking, but he thinks they're cheesy anyway, and he's still doing them. And they're like, yes, that's what he would say. And I was like, oh my gosh, you know? I mean, I'm just an interpreter, but to answer your question, I believe that people know or have inklings and like intuitive moments where they see, oh, okay, this there's a white hummingbird, there's a hummingbird that keeps coming around whenever I think about my mother, or there's a like for me, one of my best friends passed with cancer, and she comes to me in yellow butterflies. I have another, like my mother-in-law passed a couple years ago, and she comes to me in sparrows, like beautiful golden sparrows. So it was something that meant a lot to them when they were alive. And then you have that little inkling of like, oh yeah, I feel like it's them. I always tell people, I'm always confirming for people, if you believe that that's them, then believe that's them. You're not hurting
Oh,
anyone, you know? Like, I mean, I've heard some random things, and I'm like, hey, if you believe that that noise is them, then rock on.
and rock
Um,
on.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I'm trying.
beautiful.
Yeah,
How did you get into becoming an intuitive, a reader? Tell us a little bit about that journey,
sure.
and then I really am going to get to the next part that I want to talk to you about. I just keep getting sidetracked because I'm like, oh, this is interesting. This is how did you get into that?
Yeah. Hmm. So my entire life, I've always known things about people or known things about situations and didn't really understand why I knew things. A really good friend of mine passed away when I was 22 or 23, and she came to me, and I just thought it was normal that people that you love come to you and talk to you, right? Um, and that was in my 20s, but until I was 32, I broke up with the guy who seroconverted to HIV positive, and um, I dated someone else for 2 years. Same kind of issues, same like not available, not reading my love languages, not understanding my love languages. And I broke up with that person, same way I broke up with the first person, and the world opened up to me. Like the world universe at like when I was 32 or something, the universe was like, you are now ready. Someone must have made some type of decision because it went from 0 to 90 in one day. Yeah, like I literally the following day I started to feel people. Like mediumship was my first kind of foray into the psychic work and intuitive work that I do. Um, and I couldn't help it. Like I would be out to dinner and they would mention someone that passed, and I would start seeing all these things. And then I would just start telling people, like, did you live in a house with like a red bow and a gate? I'm like, well, they're like, how would you possibly know that? So and I knew it was something. And it took me about like 6 to 8 months to kind of understand, like, oh, this is a thing. And it took me another month. I did some studying with someone because I didn't know any of the mediums except on TV, right? I didn't know any
Right.
mediums. So then I started studying and a little bit, but I've realized that my gifts are very like um, unique for me because every 2 years it seems like I get a new gift. Like it started with psychic mediumship. Then I learned that, oh, I could do intuitive readings, which I consider to be talking to people about their not so distant past, their present, and their not so distant future, right? So then I did some Reiki work, and then energy healing came into play, and I help people get rid of like headaches and like small aches in their bodies and like pain, and then I did prenatal readings. So I started reading for
Wow.
yeah,
Oh,
children in the womb, and then I started reading animals. I had no idea I could do that. So I'm due for my next one, which I can't wait to see what it is. But it was just it's the gift that keeps on giving. Um, yeah. And now, I've been in HR for 18 plus years. That's always been my kind of my day job until recently. And I got a coaching degree when I was like 22, 23 years old, or 25 years old, sorry. And I combine it all together now into what I call intuitive leadership coaching, right? So that's the corporate America experience, the with the executives, the coaching experience, and then my intuitive gifts. And that's like a trifecta.
Okay, so when you say you're reading animals,
Yeah.
what does that mean?
It means I can communicate with living and deceased animals. So if you have a dog, I can connect with your dog, your cat. I've connected with a snake before, dolphins, elephants. Yeah, cheetahs. Yeah, cheetahs are amazing.
Okay,
Um,
so can I ask you I swear I'm going to get to this. This is going to be like
it's all
we're
good.
eventually going to get there. So we believe so I paddle on the ocean with one of my dear friends.
Okay.
We have there's a pot of dolphins that will come up often. And I'm always like, there this dolphin is again. It's like this one dolphin knows that it's Coco and me. And I truly do believe. I'm like, this dolphin knows. Now, I also have had in my time out there, especially through my trauma healing, whales that would just come up next to me. And I
Wow.
once had a mama whale. She had a little baby with her. And I looked her in the eye. And it was as if, and it was also this time that I was going through everything and I was supporting my kids so much. And, I was tired, but I was also healing myself. And I am a complete mama bear. Like anybody come near my kids for any reason, and it's just how I am. Love my kids. And I had this moment of like, wow, this mama whale was sitting here telling me, having this conversation with me while this mama whale was also protecting her baby, that she sees me. It was like this time of like, I needed to be seen as a mom. So, do you have any? I'm just going to ask it. Like, does anything come up for you? does that resonate?
Oh,
Because I
absolutely.
truly do believe that we have the same dolphins that just know that when Coco and I are out there, they're like, oh, they're out here. Let's go play. Because they literally play with us. It's
Yeah.
crazy. They jump, they play with us, they come under our board. We're like taking pictures, we're like talking to them.
Yeah. I mean, think about too, dolphins are not only metacognitive in nature, so they're aware of their own awareness, they're using way more of their brain than we are. So I believe 100%. So they're intuitive because they use more of their brain, right? So yes, I think they feel you, they know you. And animals are simple in um, their wanting to play, right? And what was it? What was your purpose, passion, and play? Is that what
Yeah,
you're
purpose,
saying?
passion, play. Yeah.
Got it. So yeah, I think they fit 100% into that mold. Like their purpose is to live and to have fun and enjoy. Um, and their passion is like they don't get the chance to connect with humans very often. I don't
Yeah.
think they really like humans all that much. But if they find someone that they like, they definitely will come to you. I mean, I've had such incredible conversations with animals, like a cheetah. My husband and I both read this. He's South African. We were in South Africa. We were at this cheetah rehabilitation center, and one of the cheetahs was actually one of the was it Black Panther, the black puma, no, the black leopard. Right? He was limping, and it was his back hind leg was really hurting him. And I told the owner because she came by, and I was like, that it's really hurting him. And she's like, how can you possibly know that? I was like, oh, I'm a medium, and I talk to animals. She's like, oh my God, come with me. So she literally like brought us back into this area, and she introduced us to Mary, the cheetah. So it was just the handler and like two of us, like my husband and I. And she's like, I want you to do a reading and tell me everything afterwards. I was like, okay. So Mary was like amazing. Like I don't, how do I say it? I don't know how to explain like being with a cheetah, listening to them purr. And clearly this cheetah had been around humans, right? So she was, I don't want to say tame, but somewhat friendly. And she loved being pet. And she was just there and she's like, yeah, I'm dying. I was like, oh, okay. She's like, I have far less days ahead than I've had behind me. I was like, well, that's beautiful. she's like, yeah, it's okay. Like, I don't want her to do it. I know she wants to do operations. I know she wants to do surgeries. Like, I've lived an incredible life, and she told me a little bit about her life. And then she told me, like, I'm here to rest and die, and I'm okay with that. And she needs to be like, she's talking about the owner. She's like, she needs to be okay with that too. And when I told the owner that, she started crying. She's like, I know she has terrible cancer and I don't know what to do. And I wanted to help her. I want to help her. And she's like, but now I guess I won't. And yeah. And then we connected with a cheetah that had passed away, like her very first cheetah that she had for like 20 years, passed away like the year before, and that cheetah came through. So I say all this to say that animals are so much more beautiful and simple. And I love doing animal readings far more than human readings because it's just fun. And no one wants to, like, animals don't carry the baggage that I believe that sometimes we carry into the next life or our heaven, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and humans are complicated, but they always want to hear from their animals.
Yeah. I had a three-legged dog that just passed
Okay.
too long ago.
Oh,
So, and it was the back leg. So you just saying that, I was like, oh man, I miss my Bailey so much.
hmm,
Yeah, Bailey was a
really.
very, very, very sweet dog that was being abused by my neighbor. And so I ended up taking Bailey in. Yeah. We rescued Bailey and then
Good for
had to
you.
take his leg off because the owner was abusing him. So, and yeah. And so animals, I think that we underestimate the healing properties that they can also give to us
Absolutely.
just by being in their presence, especially even down to spiders. Like spiders are very fascinating little creatures. If you sit and watch them and what they do and how they create their homes, they're fascinating. And
Totally.
we're afraid of them. It's like, seriously? Like I'll save a spider all the time. I do all the time. Like if a spider comes to my house, I rescue it and put it outside. Like, come
Me
on.
too. Me too. Or I just let them stay for a while and then I rehome them.
Yes,
Yeah.
rehome them.
Yeah.
Exactly. So okay, so let's step into the space. You talked about the smile, about
Yep.
that, and then
Yep.
let's dive into the space of resilience and how, I mean, this is fascinating that you got into this work and all of what you do and how this is literally umbrellaed under resilience.
Mhm.
So let's talk about resilience and also those pieces that you bring into the corporation, into corporate, into the work that you do.
I no matter what I'm going through during the day, if it's like a tough day or a challenging day, when I meet with someone to talk about them or the resilience or coaching, it always grounds me and it always is like this is my purpose, like moving people through. And just because I say moving people through, it doesn't happen overnight,
Yeah.
right? Like sometimes it's months and months and months to help someone move through something. Um, but it's like I also believe that everything I do are all tools, right? So my 6 levels of awareness, that's a tool that can be used inside or outside the workplace. Everyone needs better awareness no matter where you are. And then we have the SMILE method. Then I have the GRACE method, which helps people move through past traumas and that they can't really get over. They still have a little work to do, right? So GRACE is another acronym that I use. And then I can't wait to see more.
We touched on a lot of what you bring to corporate as well, which is the awareness piece, right? The resilience, the intuition, which is something that I think so many of us shy away from as we get older
Mhm.
because we have this, I don't know, this feeling, right? Like that I mean, for me, it's about playing with your intuition. And we lose that concept to play as we get older, I do find with a
Mhm.
lot of my clients. And
Mhm.
so tapping into the play also taps into their intuition. And then the fourth thing that we had talked about earlier also was impact, the impact that you
Mhm.
have through these hard times that you walk through.
That is what makes me so emotional. Like this weekend when I was doing my 6 levels of awareness talk, it's called corporate clarity, by the way. And this person after the course, or she asked me a question, she's like, what is the best part about the work that you do? And I got so emotional because sometimes I don't see like the good or the changes until maybe years later or months later. But what feels so good is the people that support me knowing that this is my work as well.
When you're talking about the GRACE method, tell us a little
Yeah,
bit more about that. You told us a little bit about the SMILE method. Tell us a little bit more
sure.
about the GRACE method, because I know that there are a lot of people listening to this that perhaps do have pieces of their trauma or their past or their hard times or difficulties, whatever you want to call them, that they may still be holding on to and having a hard time working through. So tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. That's in my book called From Grief to Grace. Um, Essentially, GRACE is another acronym. I think G is for going deep. So what I like to do is I like to take my clients, like, tell me the most exaggerated story about what happened to you. Just tell me, like, I don't want to say you're a victim, but I almost want to say, tell me like you're living through it again. We go through that. Then we go to the R, which is responsibility. So what I then have them do is I have them tell it from the other person or the other person's perspective, or the other, like if it's cancer, tell me from cancer's perspective. If it's death, tell me from death's perspective. If it's a work situation, tell me from the work situation's perspective. So you see both sides, and then you know the truth is somewhere in there. But it's really hard for people to tell it from the other side,
Mhm.
right? But that's where the work is, right? And then we decide from a responsibility and accountability perspective, we then decide, okay, where's the truth in that? And then once the truth comes out, then you go into A, which is like activating emotions, because you need to have those same poignant and significant emotions. But these are intentional. These are to move through. These are our, it's not quite the highs and lows of going through something in the present time. This is really understanding where all these emotions are coming from in the past. Then we get to C, which is compassion. So I believe that we not only need to forgive others, but the most important person we need to forgive is ourselves, right? Um, and then E is for evolving, because once you go through this path, you get to a point where, okay, you can put it on a shelf if you want. It's kind of like the way to move on. Like I love the word onward, and I love the movie Onward. It's all about moving onward, right?
You do know that this is my mom's handwriting. Speaking of my mom talking about full circle, and
Yeah.
it's the word forgive.
Mm,
And forgiveness is something that has been a huge part of my platform.
mm,
And I 100% agree with you. It starts with forgiving yourself first and then moving into forgiving others.
mm. Sure. Yeah.
And when I'm working with people too, when we are talking about forgiveness, it's about sitting in and rewriting the story, and also sitting with the perspective of that person who has also hurt you, right? And writing from that space. And it's hard.
Oh yeah.
That is some hard stuff, let me
Yeah.
tell you.
Yeah.
It also really gives you a different perspective so that you can understand from a different space.
Hmm.
And it is difficult. That can be painful.
It is. It is painful. I mean, I'm
Oh,
not saying it's easy. I
oh,
never said this was easy.
oh, oh,
This is the
oh.
work that we all get to do.
It is. And you know what? I think that the one thing that I always tell my clients too is that it doesn't have to suck. It can hurt. It doesn't mean it has to stay sucky,
Right.
because there's so much fun in the other side. How do you bring play into your work? How do you do that?
Oh, um, I I like to laugh. And I don't necessarily crack jokes, because if you asked me for a joke, I couldn't tell you a joke. But when I'm talking to my clients, I know what makes them laugh. And we keep it light sometimes. And sometimes they get uncomfortable. We laugh. And then we go back into the deep work, and then we laugh again. Um, I I'm always lighthearted. I'm always meeting people where they're at. Um, I love to go out and feel I tell them, like, when was the last time you went out to the beach and felt your feet on the floor? You know, they're on the sand.
Yeah.
Um, I think I offer moments to play for people. Um, but it's something I can definitely get better at as I'm thinking about it. You know, like how to bring more play into that. Um, but I always have a good time. Even in readings, when we're talking about people dying and how they died, it's still, there's something in me that's always light. Like there's a light always inside. So seeking that joy and that laughter is just what I do. Um, and people generally, when they work with me, they start becoming more intuitive, and they start finding and seeking the joy and laughter, which is not always easy either when you're in the lows of the lows or the emotional parts and of healing. Um, but thank you for asking that question because I want to think about it more.
Well, I'm gonna think about how I'm gonna get more intuitive. So actually, because I'm pretty damn intuitive, I have to say. Like I will
I
say,
can, yeah,
and I also grew up in a space that didn't always support that, you know? And so I think I know moving forward that you're giving me this little like gift of, hey, play with the intuitive a little bit more, Sara, you know? Like
yes,
go out there and play with that more. Uh, my mom, I just want to share a little reflection on my mom. She and I were so close. Still are. Goodness. Um, she used to say to me, cry it out and fill it back up with laughter.
that's
Don't sit with an empty
awesome.
cup. Let it out, cry it out, get through it, and fill it back up with laughter. Because ultimately, and she used to have a cackle laughter. It's like people could hear her from a mile away. She sounded like she's
Wow,
God love her. She sounded like a witch. Like literally, she had that like that cackle laugh that that you could hear everywhere.
wow,
And now
okay,
I think about that, like continuing to fill it back up with laughter and that smile within you.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
beautiful. I'm
that's good.
so blessed and honored to have had this conversation with you.
Oh,
I
thank
know
you.
we're coming
Me
up on
too.
time.
Yeah.
You are remarkable. And I want to ask you a very important question. This is
Okay.
just coming to me.
Okay. Then
Okay.
go with it.
I'm totally going with it. I want to, okay, so imagine those people that are listening right now. You are, let's just, I don't know why, but I keep coming up with this number of 23. You're 23
Okay.
years old.
Okay.
You are 23 years old.
Okay.
You, Seth, are 23 years old.
Okay.
Okay. What now, as your adult version of self, this person that you are today, this future version of self of who you are now today, what would you tell your 23-year-old self about this journey and this living and everything that you have worked through, this understanding, this awareness, this intuitive, the resilience, the impact that you've had? What would you say to yourself at 23? And this is where I'm going to take it a little step forward.
Okay.
All of our listeners are also 23. So these words that you're going to be speaking into, it's not only to yourself, it's to all of the listeners of who are also their 23-year-old self.
Okay. I'm just gonna go with what I'm hearing and feeling, but there's nothing to worry about until there's something to worry about.
Mm.
It could always be worse. Um, time is always on your side. Um, emotions and feelings are like farts, they come and go. There's that's the
There's the
play,
play.
right? Um, when you're in those without the dark times, you can't appreciate the sweet times. Um, ask for support. You don't have to be perfect. You never have to be perfect. It's a big one for me. Now I'm going to start crying. You don't have to have it all together all the time. Give that up. The earlier, the better. I'm just learning that now at 45. So, um, get out into nature.
Mm.
Um, explore the world. Make friends wherever you go. Um, find what you love to do and then do that. And I want to say strive for excellence, but I think that excellence in yourself,
There you
right?
go. Oh,
Get to know yourself. Oh my God, yeah. I mean, the whole awareness piece, right? The more awareness you have, the better, more curious, more adventurous, more exciting, more playful your life will be. Embrace messiness, learn to embrace the messiness of life, learn to embrace the chaos, um, and that life is magical. Um, Let it be magical.
yes.
Oh, and help others, right? Like help others. Yeah. Whenever and wherever you can. Um, and the people that you choose in your life, those are your family,
Yeah.
right? And I would also say fall in love as much as possible.
May I add to that one?
Yeah, yeah.
Especially with yourself.
Especially with yourself. Yes,
Especially with yourself. And there's going to be days where you're going to fall out of love with yourself, and that's okay.
that's totally,
That's
yeah,
totally okay.
yeah.
There had been days where I have fallen out of love with myself, and that's totally okay.
A couple more things.
Keep
Do
going.
do the work, go to therapy, do coaching, explore with plant medicines for sure. Um, and I love this, and this is where I'll end, but like the best is always yet to come. I think it's so important that we realize that. Yeah, yeah.
That was something I used to say to myself all the time, and I completely forgot about it until right now.
Yes.
The best is yet to come. Oh my gosh. There have been so many aligning words and moments in this conversation. I couldn't thank you enough. Wow.
Mm.
So thank you for that. And I don't know why 23. I do feel like the 23 is the number of like that my young 20s was a huge uh turning point for me.
Sure.
And I'm sure it is for a lot of people. And I think it's also important for us to go back to those different stages of our life and also sit with, okay, like I always talk about bringing those versions of self forward and also going back and having conversations with those past versions of self,
Mm.
right? Because there's so much to learn from them. So whatever 23-year-old self is in you right now, those listeners, and you're getting these messages, remember that that 23-year-old self is also a part of yourself at this moment right now too. So
Mm.
yes,
Love it.
I am so appreciative. And so where can people find you?
Sure. I am SethEliot.com. One L, one T in Elliot. I am SethEliot.com. Also, my social handles are all at Seth Eliot Santoro, one word, at TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. Um, and then if you type in Seth Eliot Santoro on Amazon, you'll see all my
Get it
books.
all. You're going to get it all.
Get it
You're
all,
gonna get
children's
it
books and
all.
the
There's a
self-help
lot.
books.
There's a lot. Go dive in, everybody, and have some fun with this. And definitely, I would love at some point to bring you back on, if that's okay, because
Absolutely.
this is so much fun. And I have different ideas that are just kind of like floating up there right now that I'm
Me too.
playing with as we're having these conversations. So,
Yes, yes. I
oh,
think
it's so good.
Bailey definitely has something to do with it too.
I did.
Yeah,
Seriously, I was literally
yeah.
like, oh, Bailey.
Bailey. Yep.
It's just such a sad and yet such a beautiful story of him and what he brought to this family. Yeah. So there is so much alignment in that story.
I love it.
And like that's a whole nother conversation. That's a whole other that we will have. So
Awesome.
thank you.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right, everybody. Make sure that you share this with your friends, your families, those people in your life, in your platforms, everything, because I know that this conversation will help many. Go rate,
Mm.
review, subscribe, do all the things. And please, when you do share it in your platforms, tag us, both Seth and myself, and we will reshare in ours. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.